Second.
Yeah, we do need Wayne Brown, so I don't know where he is.
He here.
You're live now. You're live now.
I'm always here, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to call us to order. We're going to go right to Wayne Brown.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. We'll request a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of personnel and litigation.
Don't move.
I'm sorry, that was muffled. Can I get, there were several.
Don't move.
Thank you, Mr. Sykes.
Second,
Ms. Scott.
Whenever you're ready, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett, Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight, Ms. Scott,
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Lena, Ms.
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Bonner. Commissioner McKnight is trying to get back in before you
I'm-
publish it.
I'm
Okay,
here.
okay,
I'm
are
here.
you voting, ma'am?
Let's vote.
No, we are. I just need to
Okay.
know how you're voting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. That motion carries with Mr. Garrett out.
All right. Take us into executive session. Are we back out?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ms. Bonner,
Yes, sir.
Motion.
Have
We
you
need to-
skipped
we
us
need-
over, sir?
yes, ma'am.
We need a motion for the closed meeting affidavit.
So moved.
So move.
Second,
Second.
Yeah, Dennis Williams and Mike Dyke second.
I believe that was Mr. Sias first, so, but we'll get it.
Yes, ma'am. It
Thank
probably
you.
was. It probably was, yeah.
All right, Mr. Clark, closed meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right. Going to the attorney.
Yes,
Amen.
sir. Our first motion would be a motion to extend the resignation date of Mark Me Hall to June 4th,
So
So
moved.
move. Second.
Second.
2021.
That's Mr. Garrett and Mr. Sun resignation, Mark Mehal for 30 days.
No,
What date specific is that, Mr. Attorney?
June 4th, 2021.
June 4th. 20. Yes,
So
sir.
remove your 30 days, Ms. Bonner, just to June to deal with the date. If you don't mind, I'm sorry.
Okay. Is that acceptable, Mr. Attorney? Was that the motion?
Yes, a motion to extend the resignation of Mark Me Hall to June 4th, 2021.
Thank you. Okay,
Yes,
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Attorney Brown.
Yes, sir. One last motion. It's a motion to approve the separation agreement and release of claims between William A. McDonald and Augusta, Georgia, under the supervision of the Augusta Law Department.
So move.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Okay, that's Mr. Sun and Ms. Scott. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
And yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Mr. Attorney Brown, anything else?
No, sir. There's no further business.
Okay, Ms. Bonner,
No, sir, we're good. Thank you.
Mr. Donald? You good? All right, it's 2:15. Do we need 2 or 3 minutes to go to restroom, or we want to go right into the meeting?
Take
Right
five.
into the meeting?
Take 5, sir, Mr. Sias.
Take 5? All
Yes.
right,
Yes.
all right.
Is
We'll
it-
take 5. We'll take
is-
5
is-
and we'll be right back.
Is this 5 real minutes or 5 Mayor Davis minutes?
No, five real minutes. 5 real minutes.
All right, we're waiting for a few more to come back, Ms. Bonner.
To lead us in our invocation, and Mr. Garrett, our pledge.
I didn't hear the invocation, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Dennis Williams. He hasn't.
Okay,
And Mr. Garrett to lead us in our pledge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We ready?
we will remain silent as he recites the pledge. Okay.
Father, we come to you this afternoon as always. Thank
Are
you
we
for the
on?
many blessings. Are we on invocation?
yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Father, we come to you this afternoon as always. Thank you for the many blessings. We ask that the blessing upon each and every household that's represented here this afternoon. We ask that you give us strength, wisdom, and good common sense in order to conduct the business of our community. We ask that you keep that umbrella of protection always over us. And these mighty things we pray in the name of the mighty Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
All right, good afternoon, and welcome to the commission meeting today. Ms. Bonner? Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have the addendum agenda, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, have you all looked at the addendum agenda? Can we
Yeah.
adopt it? Can we adopt it without objection? Okay, I don't see any
No
objection.
objections.
Okay, which way you want to go, Ms. Bonner? We want to go ahead and add to the consent agenda or what?
Yes, sir. You can do that, or yes, and then we'll go back to the delegations if that's the.
Yeah,
or the-
let's do that first. Okay,
do the-
so,
Our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 30. Items 1 through 30. And for
okay,
the benefit of any objectors to any of these, I would ask Mr. Sherman if there were any objectors to the planning petitions on the consent agenda.
He's coming in right now.
Okay.
I got you, Mr. Garrett, as soon as Mr. Sherman gets finished.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Oh, he's still,
He's down there. Mr. Sherman,
he's trying to connect the
Okay.
audio.
Ms. Bonner, there, for the items on the.
Go ahead, Mr. Sherman. Oh,
can you hear?
he's having audio trouble. I think he was trying to indicate that there were no objectors to any of the planning petitions on the consent
Okay.
agenda. So our
Okay,
consent agenda consists of items 1 through 30.
okay. Going to Mr. Garrett first, Commissioner Garrett.
Okay, I've got a few items I'd like to place on consent. I'd like to place item 34,
Item 34. Okay.
35,
Item
39, and
35,
42.
39, and 42, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, we don't have 42. We haven't gone into legal, so. So let me make sure you said 39 and
34, 35, 39.
All right, Mr. Hassan. You muted, sir.
I'd like to pull item number 8 off the consent. And I'd like to add item number 35 to the consent.
we have 35.
I'm sorry, 36.
Object to 36.
All right, sir.
36.
Nobody objected to the bond, it's fine.
Yeah, I was just looking at it.
No, I just want a clarification on
Fine.
something about. That's all.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis Williams.
Yes, sir. If everyone would agree, I would like to consent item number 38, number 40.
Well, on number 40, I don't object to it. I just want to add a name to it. If we can add, Ms. Bonner, can we add the name that I want to, damn, and consent it?
Well, sir, for this to be a more orderly process, we have 3 open seats. And
Okay,
seats are appointed through the nomination process. So
okay.
we would need
So
to,
let's not,
it's a
so
little more involved.
let's not do that.
Okay,
Okay,
and he's
so let's
asking
not do 40.
38 to be, were there any objectors to adding 38 to the consent agenda?
I don't think so.
And I have one more, but
Go ahead.
I'm trying to find it. It was, I'll come back because
Mayor
I
Pro Tem.
can't find it now. It's on here.
Okay, we're going to Commissioner Size first. Commissioner Size, Commissioner
Hi.
Johnson, and then Commissioner Clark.
What'd you say?
I would like to pull item 24 and 25.
Item 24 and 25.
Just some things we need to make sure.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Am I recognized?
Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Hang on a sec. You finished, Mr. Size?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Johnson.
All
Commissioner
right.
Johnson.
Thank you. On number 38, it says consider. Is consider approving, or we're just considering it? I mean, what does that mean?
Approving.
Approval?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Clark, Commissioner Clark.
By any chance, can we add 37 to consent?
No, sir. Got questions on that one.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
That's a
Okay,
tip for
Commissioner
Dennis.
Dennis. All right,
I
hang
can
on.
live with it.
Commissioner Dennis Williams, you good?
I got one more.
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's item number 27.
Are you pulling it?
No,
Are you pulling it?
I'm
What
considering.
did you want to do?
It's already on it.
It's already on.
It's
Yeah, it's already on consent.
27 is already on consent.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Donald, you had a question, Mr. Donald?
Just to provide clarity, I think you should leave it on the consent, but for that item that is number 38 that Commissioner Johnson asked about, just for the record, I think you want to have the amount of that position and what the position that he was asking for was. And so it's 50,000. It's about $51,000, and it is a judicial court clerk. And so we just want to make sure that for the record, I'm sorry, it's $50,474, and it's a judicial case manager. I apologize, I misspoke. So $50,474, and it's a judicial case manager. And so I think it can stay on consent. You just want that for the record.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
All right,
Can I
Commissioner,
ask a question,
Commissioner
please?
Hassan, Commissioner Hassan, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Administrator. In terms of looking at that salary from other comparable positions, is that salary accurate?
Yes, it is. So
Okay.
it's actually, it includes benefits, the computer, and all of that good stuff. And it would be, there is no position over there now, so it would be funded out of contingency.
Okay,
all right.
Commissioner
Yes,
Stiles.
Mayor Pro Tem, I object to 38 going on the consent agenda. I support it. We just need to add this information properly. So if we could just do that item as normal.
Okay, all right. So we're objecting to number 38, Ms. Bonner. Commissioner Clark, not Commissioner Clark, but Commissioner McKnight. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, sir. I wanted to make sure we are already authorizing number 16 to maintain clerk of commission. Is that?
Yes, ma'am. It's
That's
on
done.
consent.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right.
all right. Commissioner Clark.
Can we pull 8 off the consent agenda, because there's a.
It's already
been done.
It's already been pulled.
Okay. Thank you. Didn't hear that.
I didn't.
Okay, anybody else?
Motion
All
to
right,
approve.
Ms. Bonner, yeah. Ms. Bonner, hang on a second. Ms. Bonner, you got the numbers? You got it?
Well, let's go through them to make sure we have everybody's pulled.
Okay.
Consent agenda. Item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 34, 35, 39.
Okay, one more, Ms. Bonner. On the addendum agenda, I believe we got the mayor's sign or something. I don't know if anybody has the appetite to really sit here and discuss whether or not the mayor's gonna put a sign on the side of his car. So if we could we put that one on the consent agenda?
To move forward with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. I got some
Hang on
details.
a second, Ms. Bonner. Commissioner Hassan.
Now let your attorney speak first. I'll come behind if I need be. Attorney, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
No problem with what you're just trying to do, Mayor Pro Tem, except I believe you would need a motion to schedule a public hearing for that matter.
Okay, so can we move it forward knowing that with the public hearing, or we just need to take it off?
Leave it where it is.
Okay, that's fine. Let's leave it where it is. Don't worry about it, Ms. Bonner.
Okay.
So the ones that you named, we got a motion from Commissioner Garrett. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, whenever you're ready, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously for the approval of the consent agenda as stated.
Yes, ma'am. Where do you want to go, Ms. Bonner? You want to go back to?
The delegation serves since we
Yes,
have.
ma'am. Let's start with A.
Mhm.
We'll start with A.
Okay. First delegation, Mr. Robert W. Lee, regarding support from Mayor Davis for musical message of hope.
Is he here?
He should be in the public space.
He's on his way up.
Okay. Do we still need Mr. Sherman in here?
He's okay. We'll be getting
Okay.
shortly to the planning items.
Gotcha. Good afternoon, Mr. Lee. How you doing?
Good afternoon. How y'all doing? Praise the
Great,
Lord.
great, great. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
You need to state his name and address, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, please.
State your name and
Okay.
address, sir.
Robert Lee of Augusta, Georgia, 2216 Grand Boulevard. Yes, we'll try to use this 5 minutes very productive. I was listening to the mental reports in the city about the pandemic. And I have prayed and asked the Lord to give me something that I can do to hopefully help others. So the pandemic has really been something. So he gave me a song. And I wanted to hopefully, y'all could hear it from me and give me your opinion. Would it be something to help people to, in this pandemic, to get their shots and wear their gloves and masks and stuff? Here it go.
You all right, Mr. Lee?
I'm ready. I'm singing in the style of James Brown, my cousin, and I'm singing it in his style. I hope y'all enjoy this.
You're having audio trouble, Mr. Brown? I mean, I'm sorry.
But
Mr. Lee.
I should have it. I should take care of it.
Mr. Mitch Pro Tem, would you like to give Mr. Lee an opportunity to, and then he can come after the other
Sure.
delegation?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Mr. Lee, if you could step out and allow the next delegation, and we will call you when your audio is.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Our next delegation is Ms. Dolores Opajo regarding Black Lives Matter movement.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
In
How you doing?
1982.
Hang on a second, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I need you to say your name and your address, and you have
Okay.
5 minutes.
My address is 103 East Walker Street, Augusta, Georgia. My name is Opajo. All right, may I start now? Any more questions?
Okay, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
In 1982, when the Black Panthers came to an end, the organization saw that some Black people would become a racial problem for the future. So they poured in some money by creating a movement that would be called the Black Lives Movement to deliberately detour some Black people off their course of successful achievement opportunities. No schools, no education, no jobs. These organizations came from over the water, different nationalities as children. Their parents taught them that Black people were bad, white people were bad. So they went on and went easily to be brought down. The white man and the Black man has been brought down by various organizations. That's why they keep the Black man down, talking about Jim Crow and racialism. Their agenda is to demolish, destroy, tear down, burn down, ready for combat to fight, because they oppose the freedom, the liberty, the quality of life the United States. These groups down the street, around the corner, down by the club, at the restaurant, waiting, standing by on call for the next riot. I can't call no police because we have to imagine the police when they take my last $5 out my pocket. Let's get the record straight. The Black Indians were here first in the United States after Noah's Ark. The great turmoil, the disturbance, the slaughtering, they came relocated to the United States of America around the 19th century, give and take. The Spanish arrived in America around 1440. Mexico came out from Spain. The white man did not take America from the Spanish. Mexico came out of Spain. I am concerned about the great-great-grandchildren of our future. We are being outnumbered. God called the white man and the Black man to work together. However, you lost your way. Now, look where we are. They dye their hair black, they dye their hair. You think they are white, they are not white. Oregon, Seattle, and Minnesota, and etc. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comments by anybody? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Our next delegation, item number C, Dr. Rebecca G. Harper, regarding Aiken Augusta Swim League Partnership and grant awarded for swim lessons.
Good afternoon.
Hang on 1 second. I need you to state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Dr. Rebecca Harper, and my address is 1040 Valley Green Drive, Aiken, South Carolina.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I am the board president of the Aiken Augusta Swim League, and our home pool is in Richmond County at the Augusta Aquatic Center. And in the past month, we received funding from the Kisner Foundation for awarding swim lessons to low-income children in this area. So it's a small grant, it's about $6,200, but we're looking forward to working with Richmond County and the residents to be able to offer this service. Maurice McDowell has been instrumental in helping us at the Aquatic Center, and we know there's a significant amount of potential for that facility. A lot of residents in this county I'm not sure know that facility is there. And as a swim club, I don't know that we do the best job of working with residents within Richmond County. A significant number of our membership comes from Columbia County. And as you notice, I don't live in Georgia, I live in Aiken, but we use the facility. So several things that we're looking forward to doing is bringing some new needs to Augusta that will be housed at the Augusta Aquatic Center, which would allow a significant number of people from outside of this area, from across the state of Georgia, and even possibly having people from the Southeast come for meets here in Augusta. That would help with tourism and of course dollars coming into this area. We worked well with the county administration to improve that facility. The Aiken Augusta Swim League helped secure a grant from the CSRA Community Foundation for a brand new scoreboard a few years ago. We assisted in purchase of brand new lane lines for the Aquatic Center. And we also assisted in the purchase of 8 new starting blocks. So we are very interested, invested in that facility. And what we can do as a corporate or a nonprofit to help strengthen our relationship with Richmond County, make sure that we're serving the residents of this county and doing what we can do to help improve that facility. So in the coming weeks, the board of directors is going to be working with our program director as well as Mr. McDowell about the next steps for securing children to come take part in these swim lessons, which will be free to them. So that we're really excited about that because there are probably a lot of children who might not have access. And this is a great way to teach. It's a life-saving skill, but also to help maybe some students who haven't thought about as a possibility swimming for athletics and the number of opportunities there are for scholarships and such. The other portion of that Kisner grant is going to allow us to do an education component. So in my job that I get paid, I'm an associate professor of literacy at Augusta University. And so as part of this grant, there will be a type of education component. So either a tutoring component or a book club. So that's also going to be part of this particular grant that will be available for these students.
All right, thank you. Any questions from anyone? We're good if you're good, man. Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Our next delegation, Mr. Galen Bell, regarding application for small business relief. Mr. Bell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bell.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I need you to state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes after that.
Graylin Bell. I live at 3202 Warwick Place, Hepzibah, Georgia.
You have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I currently went online to apply for this small business payroll protection that Richmond County was offering. And it was asking entirely too much information. And I went on the federal side and applied in 15 minutes with none of the stuff that was asked from the local side. And I was just wondering why it was so hard to apply for this, because I gave up. I didn't want to go no further, along with me and a lot of other people that I know of who tried to apply for this thing and just asking for entirely too much information to keep our businesses afloat payroll wise. And it was hardening. I've been here over here about 20 years. And my mission is to employ people to help people with jobs, but to keep stuff afloat during this pandemic and stuff like that. It's been really hard for the application process because it asks too much personal stuff down the road. EIN number I do have, I'm licensed. I got everything, all my documents in order, but just to go down the paperwork was just entirely impossible.
Gotcha. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Mr. Hassan?
Yes, thank you, sir. Mr. Bell, how you doing, sir?
Good, you?
Yes, you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned you had your EIN number.
I do.
And I hate to ask you this, but I'm gonna ask you this so I can make a point if you don't mind. So I'm gonna apologize to you in advance if I insult you and ask you this, but that's not my intent. You have your tax return for the last couple of years as well?
I do. Everything's in order.
Okay, all right, sir. My next comment, Mayor Pro Tem, is to the administrator. Mr. Administrator, can you take a look at it just on exactly what he said, or either you like to speak to it in terms of the comparison what the federal government is asking and what we're asking, you know? That always been one of the Achilles heels. And I do know, and we ought to be applauded for trying to at least put some real protection on the resources, but now that we should not make it so cumbersome that persons get discombobulated just the information, the amount of information being asked for. So number one, do you want to speak to it, and as well as kind of take a look at that and see how we can make some adjustments?
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at it and see if there are other adjustments. But what we did with the program is the difference is you've got one step with us. Once you complete our information, it's actually the same exact information that the feds require because our money is 100% federal, and it's the questions that HUD requires us to ask. But what we do is we ask them up front so that we can make sure there's only 10 to 15 days before folks get the money in their hands. And so what may be the issue is that we're asking it all up front and we're not just gathering the basic information and coming back to ask more questions later. But we can definitely find out exactly what concerns he has because the personal information is exactly the same.
Okay, can I do a follow-up, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Administrator,
Can I say one thing? The information is not the same because I just filled out.
Actually the same.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second, Mr. Hassan.
Yeah, Mr. Administrator.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about the steps again.
Yeah.
Extra information, what happens from there?
That's right. So they will fill out the information online. We get the information, vet it, and then we follow up with the applicant to confirm all of the information. From there, we actually begin processing their application and payment. Remember, we remove the evaluation steps and all of that. You literally go from application to fund delivery.
Okay.
So that's why we don't add secondary steps on the back end. We combine it where they do all of the work up front and then we're delivering payment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Can I encourage Mr. Vale to give someone your information and we have the administrator give you a call, sit down and you guys can look at the information. I think Natasha's there, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, sir, she's there. We have Mr. Bell's information on his request to appear. We could forward that to administration too.
Please do. Mr. Welcher is waiting right now to have a conversation. So we're ready to go.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bell. They'll get in touch with you and get it solved.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right, Ms. Bonner.
Our next delegation is E. With the correction, it's Mr. Anaya S. Price regarding small business funding and application process.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well, sir.
Okay, would you give your name and name?
Address 1736.
Hang on.
Lane, Helpful, Georgia.
Okay, good. You got 5 minutes.
Awesome, yes. I'm the owner of Transportation on Time. We are a small business, non-emergency medical transportation company here in Augusta. What we do, we transport clients to and from their appointments, doctor appointments, daycares and et cetera, and then they should all Medicaid clients pretty much. As you know that, I've been in business for almost 3 years, and as you know, as we were moving rapidly, moving forward, but then of course COVID hit, and we took a hard hit. And you know, as you know, hospitals shut down, they were doing telehealth, a lot of facilities shut down. I had to downsize a vehicle, lost an employee. We're starting to move forward, move rapidly, but however, you know, I took a hard hit. And as funding, when I first started, I was able to receive the EIDL as well as the PPP. Now, what I'm here for you guys, you know, especially with the gentleman who just spoke, when you guys first came out with the $5,000 grant, that grant was so difficult, I even let my lawyer look at it. And she was like, are you sure you want to do this? This right here is for $5,000. This is something for someone with a corporation, something $300,000. Now you guys just came out with the $7,500, and it still made it a little more difficult to be able to receive it, to receive it. What I'm saying to you guys, you know, as myself as well as other small business, because that was a small business who just left, and there should be more that should be here right now to speak with y'all. We need help, and we need not to be holding us from here to small business, because I have employees and I need more employees. But as a small business owner myself now, not only do I have to be the owner, be the manager, I have to be the dispatcher, and sometimes be the driver itself. I'm still not necessarily gas, payments, still pay my employees as well as insurance, and commercial insurance is very high. So what I'm asking for you guys, we need to be able to need some relief to all small businesses, and we need to be able to come up off of the restrictions that's on there. That's it.
And I think the two of you coming forward today with pretty much the same complaint, we'll take a look at that process. You got to remember that this comes down from the federal government also. But what I want you to do is give your name to Natasha also, and the administrator will get in touch with you. Somebody's going to try to help you get what you need. Hang on a second. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, two people talking about the same thing. I can only imagine that there are more people out here that's having the same issue. So a couple things that I'll be interested in knowing is how many people have the same issue with actually filling out this application to get the funding. What I would hope that we can do is, I mean, I like that they're going to meet with the administrator to figure something out, but if there are multiple people having the same issue, the administrator can't meet with multiple people. So what I think we ought to do is I would like to add something, you know, to this effect to the appropriate agenda for a committee meeting so that we can get some information about, you know, exactly what this process looks like and why is it so difficult. And maybe just, you know, just have have an overarching conversation to review this process, because these two gentlemen aren't the first that I've heard speak to these issues. And, you know, that's just something, again, like I said, I think it's worth us having a conversation about loosening these restrictions, because if the money is there, but folks aren't able to get to it because of how hard the process is, what's the point of allocating the resources? So I would like to further this conversation in committee, but certainly we need to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Mr. Donald.
One, I would ask those two gentlemen to stay stay here on site. We've actually got one of our team members coming, and we also provide this service that will actually help you fill out the application if you're having troubles. And so we want those two gentlemen to stay so that we can help them with it. I will tell you that we released the application process and simplified it as much as the federal regulations allow. So the information that we're asking, we have to ask it. We don't have a way around that, because and I know you were not here yet, Commissioner Johnson, but these are actually HUD funds. These are not the General CARES Act funds. Augusta, long before I started, decided to use those funds to kind of fill some of the gaps and holes that we had. The Federal CARES Act fund, we got permission to use the HUD version of those funds to deliver this small business service. So the information that we received is required under their program. And so because people had challenges, when he mentioned the 5,000, he's 100% on point and accurate. It was like an act of God to be able to go through that process. The 7,500, we expanded it because small businesses just weren't getting enough money. But unfortunately, the questions and things that are being asked, they have to be. And what we did was remove every other requirement. All they have to do is fill out the paperwork. And as long as that information is correct and accurate and they meet those thresholds, they get a check. And so what we're trying to do is give that concierge service. So if these two gentlemen stay where they are, we'll make sure they get their issue rectified today. And for the general public, I would challenge, call on HCD, because we actually have brought on staff that is specifically there to help them fill out their application. But yes, sir, we'll make sure to be ready in committee as well.
All right.
If that gentleman stays, we'll get them.
Go ahead, sir.
Now, with this,
go ahead, sir.
What I want to say about it. Now, the restriction that you had on it, because even though my business has took a bad hurt, I did probably the previous year, I made just barely a little bit more than what I did that previous year. So with that automatically knocked me out of being able to apply for that loan. But really, I really took a major hit last year. I mean, I think I made basically what it was saying, because I made like $2,000 more, $2,000 or $3,000 more than I did the previous year. I was disqualified from it, but I still had a very, very bad year.
Okay. All right. Well, somebody's coming to help you, and they can answer those questions probably a little bit better than we can. So he said, stay in the area where you are, and somebody's going to help you out. So,
Commissioner,
yes, sir.
We do need to make a point on that so the commission understands. Now, if you did not experience a loss because of the pandemic, so if he actually profited more during the pandemic,
Yes.
there may not be relief because in that instance, your business didn't lose money. So if that's the
Okay.
issue and the challenge, our program,
If you really want to say
Yeah.
if you
Okay.
made money,
$1,000 more prior, which
Yeah.
still I was hurting. I mean, I really don't call that I really, you can say I profit. I still, my business
Okay.
suffered.
Okay.
I still
Okay.
got hurt, which, I mean.
Sir, we understand. We got people coming who can help you, but we got to move this agenda along because we got more delegation. But somebody's coming to help you, sir.
All right.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner, we going back to Mr. Lee?
Ms. McFarley, is Mr. Lee in a good place to make his presentation?
Let's move along then.
I think he's coming on.
So.
Okay. Well, I guess.
Is he coming?
Ms. McFarley, is he in the chamber?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's working a little bit better now. I'm sorry about earlier. Just about the pandemic. That's one that's going, somebody keep calling me every time I stand up.
All right, Mr. Lee, okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you want to proceed with the agenda, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
At the end of our delegation, our next item would be item number 8. Motion
Okay.
to approve the intent of the administrator's recommendation to purchase 3 sculptures with funding of $100,000 from the current 2020 capital outlay budget, and to do this every 2 years with next funding in year 2023 and again 2025, with the revaluation in the year of 2027 to support the continuation of the sculpture trail.
Commissioner Hassan.
Thank you, sir. As I expressed at the committee cycle, I still have concerns about it, even I think my colleague, Commissioner Frantham, and the mayor as well made mention that there's some progress being made around the gateway statues and as well as that. So, but I'd like to see them come in and do a presentation or something around exactly where we are. So I'd like to make a motion to bring this item back to the committee cycle in 90 days with an update on the gateway statues. That's my motion.
All right, we got a motion and a second, Ms. Bonner.
Is that Mr. Franham? Who seconded that? I'm sorry.
I think.
Ms. McKnight? Okay. Mr. Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I speak?
Yeah, oh.
Hang on a second, Ms. Franham, go ahead.
Thank you. And I appreciate Commissioner Stein bringing it up, and I'm not going to disagree with the whole gateway, but this is a different funding than the gateway. I mean, we talked about possibly not supporting the gateway and coming back and maybe putting additional funds from the gateway elsewhere. And I'm willing to have that conversation, absolutely. But this is about supporting ongoing public art within the operational aspect of things, and the sculptures that within 2 years, we know that they're either going to be taken up or purchased. So, I mean, I agree that we need an update on the gateway, but like, I think it's 2 different conversations is my point. So I'm not real sure why we would want to stop one conversation without, because the gateway, like I said, the gateway and the funding of the sculptures in the gateway, I'm totally with you on that. Like, let's have the conversation and stop, pump the brakes. Let's see, maybe we do reassess, move funds over. But the funding of the SPLOST, which you can't move those funds out of there anyway, which is voted on by the people, is the bucket of money which you're talking about, which I'm willing to have that conversation. So I think, like, I'm just confused on why we would want to pump the brakes on one when it doesn't affect, from a funding standpoint, that allocation that we already have, I guess.
Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I think, and I agree with the Commissioner Franham, but I think But a lot of concern that I've heard, and we just need a clarification from the administrator, I believe, is that it's not going to be 100,000 per year. It's 100,000 for the total on the sculptures about the art, the sculpture trail. So it's not 100,000 per year. It's 100,000 total during that time span. Is that not correct?
Every other year.
Pardon me?
Oh,
Every other.
go ahead.
Hang on a second, Mr. Donald.
So he's right. It's the first allocation for these three sculptures is up to 100,000, and it would last through 2023. And then you would have the option of allocating again in 25 and again in 27. So that's correct. It's 100,000 that would cover that 2-year period.
Okay, Mr. Hassan.
Yes, sir. Let me, I think I make it plain. I think my colleagues, when they're addressing, I think they're running together. I'm very clear it's not the same thing. My concern is that if you have right at $700,000 or $800,000 at this point for gateway statues, and you can't seem to get that running, I'm reluctant to give additional money to try to do some other thing that's statues of the same thing, even though they may be on the trail. I think it amounts to the same, and you can't seem to get traction with that. That's why I said, really, by being a splash project, I'm not even asking this at this point. I think I have suggested, so let me retract that part of it. But I think even by being splash money, if you chose to, because it's still statues in nature, you're just moving locations. So I think you still could do that. So all I'm asking them to do is say, hey, I don't see the need to give them additional money on statues up until they get their mind wrapped around this. And they've had this money almost a couple of years now. And so that's all I'm saying. Give us an update. And I don't want to give you more money if you're not managing that which you're responsible for currently. That's my whole thing.
Got
So,
any other?
It's two different.
Okay, any other discussion?
Money.
Any other discussion? All right, let's vote on it, Ms. Potter.
Continuing the vote, Mr. Franum,
Sure, yes.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, what do we got next, Ms. Potter?
Sitting there. Item number 24. Item number 24 is to approve and provide funding for emergency repair to the main storm drain system and main sewage line serving the Fairwood subdivision at Nance Boulevard.
Commissioner Sines.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to hear from Dr. Malik. And the purpose of this is just to, Dr. Malik has sent out some additional information. And I just want to make sure that we have all our proper funding lined up for these projects. So if I'd like to hear from him, please, sir.
Is he in the room?
He's coming in.
Dr. Malik,
Yes, sir.
did you hear the question?
Yes, sir. Repair of storm lines is failing all over the place. It's old metal pipe, what we call CMP. It runs between the property lines and has multiple sinkholes. We walk the area with Commissioner Size, and it does warrant immediate attention and replacement. It's around 1,200 or 1,300 linear feet of 72-inch pipe. So the funding which we propose, and I had discussion with the finance director about that. There is a $25 million from SPLOST 7 allocated to the stormwater, what we call drainage and grading. So far, 24.13 or around that number has been released. So what we proposed was to release the remaining or the balance of 25 million, and we can use toward this effort. And maybe some others similars.
Yeah. Commissioner Size.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I think Dr. Malik has stated the case. I just want to ensure that our motion gives Dr. Malik exactly what he's asking for. So
Okay.
just to be clear, I see the caption, Dr. Malik. Is that gives us exactly what we want? If we say approve this as is?
Yes, sir. It will give us needed funds to complete that project.
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you, there, number 8.
We got a motion in it and a second, Ms. Bonner.
Okay, Mr. Sayers, would 25, could that be a companion item once you get your confirming information with this vote?
It could be Ms. Bonner, Mayor Pro Tem, depends on what Mayor Pro Tem wants.
Okay.
I would like that.
Okay, item 25, just for the record, is to approve the installation of fully functional traffic signal lights at the following intersection: Tobacco Road, Talbot Avenue, and Windsor Spring Road, Inverness Drive.
May I, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
There's one change that I want to do on item 25, a request. So if we could, I apologize for the inconvenience. Could we go ahead and do number 24 first?
Okay. All right, okay. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries
All right.
unanimously.
Back to you, Mr. Commissioner Size.
Can the clerk do 25, sir?
Yeah, I thought she
I
read
read
it.
it. I read it. Okay.
All right,
You're
thank
ready.
you.
You're ready.
Dr. Malik, I just want, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem, 2 things I wanted to, like, see, make sure we have the funding, but also I want the word construction, the word in construction, to include the actual installation of the traffic signal. Dr. Malik know what he intends, but he could be gone next year. So we want to ensure that construction means installation of the traffic signals themselves. Can I hear from Dr. Malik, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, what was the question? Because I was somehow was not in the room, and then I'm not back. You know, I don't know
On
what
item
happened.
20, on item 25, which was, I think, number 8 on the committee, or 9 or something. But just to ensure that, I want to make this motion that in construction mean installation of the signal light itself, as well as the other construction things that has to be done, particularly on Talbot Avenue.
Yes,
And
sir.
that-
So the both both intersection include design and construction or installation of traffic signals. The first one you just mentioned also includes some other improvements to make it work. And just to add on, you know, there's a development coming nearby, and we tried to set up a meeting with the developer this Friday, because he owned another large tract next to it. So we want to make sure that any potential new development is also taken into consideration, but it does include construction.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve this with construction also meaning installation of the traffic signals themselves.
Yes, sir. We got a motion and a second, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that carries us to our regular agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Start with item number 31. Is
Start.
that,
Yes, ma'am. That's good.
that's good? Item number
Yes,
31
ma'am.
is a request for concurrence to approve with conditions by Yeager Puri requesting a change of zoning from a zone R1A, one family residential, to a zone R3A, multiple family residential, affecting property known as 108 Skinner Road.
Okay. Is that yours, Commissioners?
No, that's
Brandon?
Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman is. The planning.
Okay, Mr. Sherman. Okay.
See you, Mr. Lewis? Oh, he may be.
Who are we looking for?
Rob Sherman.
Yes, he's coming in.
Okay. Mr. Sherman, we're at item number 31.
Okay, number 31 is a, well, you read the agenda item, so
I read
Skinner
it.
Road. Okay, Skinner Road intersects Washington Road at where Chick-fil-A is. The property in question is directly behind Chick-fil-A. It's 0.77 acres. They're asking to rezone it to R3A, put in apartments. This first went to the Planning Commission on March 1st, and we do have objectors. They did submit a petition. At the Planning Commission meeting, there was discussion, and the Planning Commission tabled it, asked the neighbors and the applicant to meet, see if they could come to some agreement. On March 10th, there was a Zoom meeting, and the discussion, it was a good discussion. The neighbors have objection because of the traffic and the density. The traffic big issue is right at Washington Road with the traffic coming in and out of Chick-fil-A. The station originally started with the request to rezone it multifamily for 16 units. They then reduced it to 12 units. At the meeting with the neighbors, they agreed to reduce the number of units to 6 units, and where they were to be 2-story, they will be 1-story. There will be 2 buildings, 3 units. Each building is facing towards Skinner Road. The buildings will be set, the front building will be set back in line with the house that is beside it. And so the Planning Commission, the staff's recommendation was to approve it, and the Planning Commission voted to approve it. And so that's the recommendation to you today.
Any discussion? Commissioner Frana.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just want to let everybody know that most everybody in the area was against it, and most of it was based on the traffic aspect, as well as just the townhomes being in that area. They did obviously go down to 1-story and the 6 units. I won't be supporting it today, but just letting everybody know that that everybody in that area was definitely against. I got lots of calls on this one as well, so just letting everybody know.
I motion that we approve.
Mr. Chairman, I believe.
Yes, sir.
I believe that there is a spokesperson for the neighbors in the public room. If you wanted to give.
Yes, sir. Is there somebody, and I just threw a motion out there because we got to move one way or another. But go ahead. Do we have somebody out there, Ms. Bonner?
Mr. Sherman has staff there to facilitate that process.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name
Ma'am.
is.
State,
my name is
ma'am,
Karen.
state Ma'am, state your name and address, please.
My name is Sarah Skinner Skango, and I own 200 Skinner Road, approximately 7 houses from where this particular complex is being proposed. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Gardners Woods, Bristol Woods neighbors. We, as a neighborhood, are unanimously opposed to the rezoning of the property at 108 Skinner Road, and we have submitted a petition signed by 40 of the homeowners in the surrounding neighborhood. We have seen, or you have seen photos, or I assume you've seen the photos. I've actually had a PowerPoint presentation that you don't seem to have. But you have seen photos of the existing house. There is a shopping center across the street, and the proposed apartments, they did take them down to single unit or single story, but still have 6 units total, along with 17 parking spaces, a dumpster area, and a detention pond. But let me tell you about the rest of the neighborhood, because there are quite a few of us, and there are quite a few of us in this room today. Many of the residents in our neighborhood have been there for 40+ years, and quite a few, including myself and my husband, are 3rd or 4th generation living in our family homes. In most areas, it's odd for children to move back to their childhood homes, but for us, it's quite common. I purchased the home that my grandparents built in 1950 on the land that they were gifted by my great-grandfather. And many of the kids that I grew up with have also purchased their ancestral homes. And we all are just wanting to raise our families in a quiet, tucked away neighborhood that we grew up in. There are many great qualities about our neighborhood that make it unique, but the most compelling aspect that brought us back, and the most important to us, is the organically cultivated community feel that has existed and flourished for over 80 years. We not only know the neighbors on either side of us and across the street, but we know the neighbors 5 houses down, as well as the ones on the next block. And we believe that an apartment complex would destroy our beloved neighborhood. In the last year and a half, Chick-fil-A has taken over our residential street by moving their main entrance to Skinner Road and closing off their entrance from Washington Road, causing many more accidents, near head-on collisions, and made it nearly impossible for the residents to leave the neighborhood without the fear of being hit. Adding an apartment complex immediately behind Chick-fil-A would only increase the likelihood of more severe accidents. Many of us like to walk the neighborhood or ride bikes with our children, and typically can be found outside in the yard to chat with the neighbors. Our neighborhood has no sidewalks. And adding more through traffic would put all of us at an even greater risk. We ask that at a minimum, prior to approval for rezoning, a traffic study be conducted at the intersection of Skinner Road and Washington Road. We, as a neighborhood, believe that the rezoning of 108 Skinner Road from an R1 to an R3 multi-unit property on 0.77 acres is inappropriate for our well-established and well-maintained neighborhood. Rezoning the property will greatly diminish the values of our home, drastically increase the already congested traffic in our small neighborhood, cause an increase in noise and light pollution, and will ultimately cause a ripple effect of the properties being sold out to build more apartments. In fact, the owner of the house next door, 110 Skinner Road, has already reached out to the developer and offered to sell his property for a larger apartment complex, which would end his issue, but it would increase our issues. Commissioners, I would like to ask you, would you want an apartment complex at the entrance of your neighborhood? Because we are asking you, do not allow our neighborhood to have this property rezoned. Thank you.
Commissioner McKnight.
Go ahead and say we make a motion to deny this.
Second.
Hang on a second. Did I get a second, Ms. Bonner?
Second. Second.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second to deny. Is Ms. Bonner on?
I'm sorry, I have it. Okay,
Okay,
we're
we got a
voting?
motion and a second to deny.
Yes, sir.
Hang on a second. Mr. Dennis Williams,
What was staff's recommendation?
to approve.
To
Okay.
approve.
Okay, any other conversation? Any other conversation? Hang on a second, you got Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman,
Hey, Chairman, just to mention, the applicant also is in the room.
okay. Let's get applicant about 3 minutes, Ms. Bonner.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Chris Gray, developer, B&B Commercial, 1315 West Mortontown Road in North Augusta. I'm the developer. The owner is sitting in the audience. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, it's hard to argue with everything that the lady said. I mean, very valid concerns. All we wanted to do was really go in there and build some apartments. We scaled back several times to try to appease the neighborhood, to try to get a win-win situation from it. Like I said, the main thing is from our standpoint, we purchased the land. We are wanting to put some apartments on it. We have been reached out by the neighbor. I will concur with that they are talking to us about purchasing their land to do apartments as well. So, I mean, really the facts are in front of you, and we've given it everything we got. So it's left up in your hands.
All right.
Do you have any questions for me?
I think Commissioner Scott had her hand up first, then we'll go to Mr. Hassan.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to ask Mr. Sherman, I think I heard that a traffic study had not been done. And before we vote on, could we get a traffic study done?
Commissioner Scott, we did hear from, we discussed this with Mr. Ushery, traffic engineer, and he did not feel that a traffic study is needed because of the few number of cars, few number of apartments, and that it would not have an adverse impact on this area. Now, this is right behind Chick-fil-A. Just your information, we've been informed that Chick-fil-A is purchasing the property beside it, the Mio Rancho restaurant, which is between Chick-fil-A and Burger King. That building, that restaurant will be demolished. Chick-fil-A will rebuild on that property. They will still have access off of Skinner Road, and they will use the traffic light at that is there right on Washington Road across from the entrance to Westside High School, Westside Drive. So there will be two entrances. There may be another entrance on Washington Road for Chick-fil-A, a right turn only. But they, with what will be going on there and the number of units that they're proposing to put here, traffic engineer didn't feel that a study was necessary.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Hassan. You're muted, sir.
Mr. Sherman, with
Yes,
all
sir.
the what you just made about the purchase, the Chick-fil-A purchase, so what you said, that should lighten the traffic on that particular street, or should that, do you see that increasing the traffic? I know what you say about Mr. Ursher, but I'm just saying in terms of making the observation about the purchase, what Chick-fil-A is going to do, what impact does that on the traffic that the neighborhood is concerned about, if any?
Well, so all the traffic will be at the intersection of Skinner Road and Washington Road. And with the proposed layout, and it was just a preliminary layout, there will be more cars using the entrance off of Skinner Road going into Chick-fil-A if that layout occurs. But this development itself would not, the increase in traffic because of this development would not affect the functioning of Skinner Road.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to motion to
Yes,
approve.
sir. I'll second that. Any other discussion? Ms. Bonner, we have a substitute motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
Hang on a second. Mr. Brown, Wayne Brown.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, given the size of the commission and the formality of these hearings, it would be more appropriate for someone other than the sitting chair to make a substitute motion.
Well, I take my.
I mean, make a
second. Well, I take my second back, sir.
I'll second.
I second.
We have Commissioner Dennis Williams
Yes.
first, yeah, and Ms. Scott third, but well, all right, are we ready to vote, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
No.
Mr. Franum,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
No.
Mr. Son,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias. Mr. Sias, he's out. Okay. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion fails 5-4 with Mr. Sias out.
Okay, we've got a motion to deny.
To deny. Ms. McKnight and Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
No, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Sias, Mr. Bobby Williams,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
No.
That motion fails 4-5-1 with Mr. Sias out. Voting no, Mr. Son, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Scott, Mr. Bobby Williams, and Mr. Dennis Williams. No.
All right, we good with that, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir. For now.
Let's move on to 32.
We're on number 32. Item 32 is a request for concurrence with the Planning Commission to approve with conditions a petition by James Trotter requesting a change of zoning from a zone R1A, one family residential, to a zone R1E, one family residential, affecting property known as 3055 and 3061 Dennis Road.
Mr. Franum, or should we go to Mr. Sherman first, Ms. Bonner?
Mr. Sherman.
Okay, we go to Mr. Sherman, then we'll go to Mr. Franum.
Chairman, Commissioners, the property in question is on Dennis Road. Dennis Road intersects Stevens Creek Road. Dennis Road is a narrow road that goes back to another townhome development and then two single-family subdivisions. The property in question is 4.02 acres. There is a request to rezone it to R1E.
It means,
Single-family residential to allow for 22 townhomes to be built on it. Now, to take you back to 2019, this was before you. There was a request again to rezone the 4.2 acres to R3A multifamily to put 40 apartments on it. That was denied. And so the applicant has come back with a scaled down project. It will be very similar to the adjoining project, the adjoining property that is zoned again R3B and with townhomes on it. The densities are very similar. Actually, the density on this project is slightly less when you look at the density of the adjoining property when you consider only the property it's built upon. There's 6 additional acres on the adjoining property that probably will not be developed because of the topography. So the densities are very similar, and they've reduced the number of units, and these will be fee simple. We have heard from the neighbors, and we have a petition, and I believe the applicant as well as the spokesperson for the objectors are in the public room.
You have someone in the public room to facilitate, Mr. Sherman?
Yes, Ms. Bonner.
Okay.
Who would you like to hear from first?
If we could hear from the applicant, Lois.
Sir, your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. My name is James Trotter. My address is 3527 Walton Way in Augusta. I'm here on behalf of Pete Perko and Perko Builders. Project, as many of you may be aware, was before you in the fall of 2019. At the time, Mr. Perko was seeking an apartment development with approximately 40 units, which came out to 10 units an acre. That project, just so you understand the history, was approved at the time by the Planning Commission, but rejected by the full commission. Mr. Perko and I have been back to the drawing board, worked with the planning department, and we have come forward now with a petition or a plan for fee simple townhome units instead, a total of 22 townhomes. That results in a density of just under 5.5 units an acre. It results in open space of 39% when only 25% is required. Mr. Sherman made reference to the densities in the area. The townhomes at Mayo are a higher density than what we're seeking. The O'Shields Court residence next door is a 7.2 unit per acre R1C development. Most importantly, the planning staff recommended approval of this revised plan. The Planning Commission voted to approve this revised plan. I certainly understand the residents that are concerned about Dennis Road. I know that the improvements on Dennis Road are a priority for Commissioner Fram and for the whole commission. And my understanding is that they are a priority on the next round of SPLOST as well for improvements. We had our own traffic study done in 2019 when we were proposing a 40-unit apartment development, and the study at that time acknowledged that Dennis Road had its challenges, but that the units would not change the level of service on Dennis Road. So many of the opponents that we've worked with, we've continued to try to talk to them. I understand their concern about this piece of property being developed whatsoever. But 18 months ago when we were here and they were opposed to apartments, they said that they could support fee simple townhomes. Here we are with a fee simple townhome plan, half the density, and something that we believe would be outstanding for that area. I'll certainly stay in the room to answer any questions that may come up. Thank you.
Got you. So we have any objectors, Mr. Sherman?
Yes, sir. I believe there's a spokesperson in the public room.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Wesley Brown. My address is 3049 Dennis Road, Augusta, Georgia. And I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Dennis Road community. As a community, we strongly oppose the request submitted by Perco Builders to rezone 4 acres of land to build a townhome community that would include 22 units. I know this because my fellow neighbors and I have directly been told this by the residents who live in the Dennis Road community. We've gone door to door. We've spoken to the neighborhood associations. We have sent text messages and emails. We've made phone calls. Community members said they all oppose the development, and they signed a neighborhood petition opposing the request. Today, the neighborhood petition has 135 signatures from residents who live in the area, including the Hunter Ridge, Magnolia Ridge, Riverstone, Stone Creek, and West Hill neighborhoods. The petition was submitted to the Clerk Commission for your review. The following key issues are the main reasons why the Dennis Road community opposes the rezoning request. Although the current state of Dennis Road is a major concern, it is not the only or primary concern. Again, it is not the only concern. One primary concern is, as proposed, unlike what has been said, the density of the new townhome community would be the highest in the Dennis Road community. The new townhome development proposed by Perco Builders would have a density of 5.47 acres per unit. That's according to the Augusta Planning Commission staff report. The actual density from that same report, which is directly west of the land Perco Builders wants to rezone, has a density of 4.52 units per acre. Magnolia Ridge, which is O'Shields Court, which Mr. Trotter referenced, is directly east of the land Perco wants to rezone. It has a density of fewer than 3 units per acre, and that's according to Richmond County GIS data. While we are opposed to the entire proposed development, we ask that if rezoning is approved, the county would require Perco Builders to eliminate, if you're looking at your drawing, units 17, 18, and 19 from this proposed land, bringing the density down to 4.73 units per acre. That's still above Mayo Townhomes, but it would allow the community to be self-contained off the frontage of Dennis Road behind my property. And we offered this same compromise to Mr. Trotter and Perco Builders, and they did not seem interested. In our opinion, the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with the city's 2035 comprehensive plan, Envision Augusta. The vision for West Augusta outlined in the comprehensive plan seeks to, quote, promote limited development of the remaining vacant tracts while preserving the single-family residential character that is predominant in the area, unquote. The Dennis Road area of West Augusta is considered to be low-density subdivisions characterized by more than 300 single-family homes. We, along with many others who live adjacent to this property, purchased our home under the knowledge that the property was zoned R1A and under the assumption that single-family homes would be built on this land. Thank you for hearing our concerns. We respectfully ask that the commission reject this rezoning request. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Franum. Hang on a second. Commissioner Franum, I believe Commissioner Dennis Williams had his hand up, and then we'll go to Commissioner Sines. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
In that order.
Okay. First, thank you for all the presentations. This is a major issue in District 7 for those on the commission or anyone. It's a very dangerous road. It's had fatalities on that road in the past. It's a road where we continue to have to maintain, whether it's crush and run, whether it's like a single road, car road. And it's very concerning that this project, if approved, the additional traffic that would come on it, number one. 4 years ago, I went to Columbia County and asked them to get their buses off Dennis Road because I continued to get complaints about cars coming down the Dennis Road curve there with buses who Columbia County runs 2 buses through there each day. And basically they told me, you know, they never gave me a solution or didn't really care to hear it, I guess. But, you know, until we get, number one, the Columbia County bus off Dennis Road, where they could go Mitchell Street, Angela Street, Parker Street around with their buses. And the fact that, you know, and I appreciate Commissioner Sias, who's always supported Dennis Road. Since I've been on the commission, I think we got the TIA funding on there as well. This road is a $7 million fix. And that shows you how much of a problem this road is. And I think as commissioners, and we talked about the density and all that's been talked about, but I think sometimes as commissioners, we have to put the health and safety of our citizens above a development. We obviously want to support development, but in this case, until we get the buses off the road, until we fix this road to where the traffic and things, I mean, on my conscience, I would never support this because of that. If something tragically happens on that road and I approve something like this, I wouldn't be able to like think that why did we approve something like this when we didn't fix the road before? And I know we're still a few years away from approving this road. I will tell people, everybody thinks that Stevens Creek is going to get widening and we're going to have some new things. Stevens Creek's not widening. That's off the table. It's not even going to happen. There is a Dollar Tree going in at the corner there. Again, it's going to create more traffic. I'm not talking about that piece when it comes to this project. I'm more talking about the fact that when you come in that curve, if you've never been on it, and how dangerous it is, and the fact that cars have to go to the side when a bus or a car comes down it, I just can't in conscience support something that would increase that aspect of travel. I mean, obviously we've talked about the density of the properties that was mentioned, as well as the fact that the community unanimously supported it against it all the way around. So I would like to make a motion to deny this project on Dennis Road today. Thank you.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second, but we still have other discussion. Mr. Dennis Williams.
No. Thank you.
You good?
Yeah.
You good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Size.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Couple of things I want to say. I heard Mr. Trotter mention about the next round of splash, which would technically be splash 9. We have, as my colleague from the 7th mentioned, we have funding in TIA, which actually I believe begins next year. And Dennis Road has been put as a priority on the TIA, and it can be even moved up even higher than that. Just it would depend on how my colleagues would like to address that. So it was a serious consideration. We know the road is dangerous. I support development as well, but as before, I still have a concern about the viability of Dennis Road. I know Mr. Trotter said that was 18 months ago, but if we do this right, we can go ahead and actually move up the issue with Dennis Road and get it done much earlier. And I believe we could actually even start on it next year somewhere. Depends on what our engineering department can and the administrator can give us a recommendation. So with that being said, I'm very concerned about Dennis Road and adding anything else to it. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? Commissioner Hassan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A couple of things. And listen to my colleague, Commissioner Franklin in particular. It is scary to hear him say about traffic and what you have to do. And I'm not doubting that, Commissioner Franklin is saying that. My question is, why would traffic engineer and they weighed in on approve this project if it having that type of congestion? Now I'm separating that from the need to do something to the road because I've been a part of that conversation as well. But currently, as we speak, the question for me becomes, how does traffic engineer say this project is okay and they weighed in on it? I mean, somebody is Dr. Malik, Mr. Ursher here, Mr. Administrator, to answer that part of it? That has nothing to do with the road repairs now. I'm talking about just the traffic, because they're saying they're fine with it as it is. Are they speaking to with the work to be done? Talk to me, Doc.
Hang on a second. He's in.
Okay, go ahead.
You want to go to Dr. Malik?
Yes, sir, Dr. Malik. Yes, yeah.
All right, Dr. Malik, go ahead.
Yes, sir. We reviewed this project and look at what was proposed and work with the developer and request a few changes. So they recommended that from an engineering department point of view, this development will not anything new to the current conditions what we have. The primary issue is the width of the road, and as Commissioner Franna mentioned, the heavy traffic like school buses and all that. When the bus is there, you cannot pass, you have to pull it to the side. So that condition will stay the way it is. So from our point of view, this 22 units not going to add anything to the condition we have.
Yes.
I do wanted to point it out that the engineering department did accelerated this project, so it is under concept level now. We already finished the survey. Actually, I have the concept layout. City or the Augusta does have a 60-foot right of way already, so really no new right of way is needed. We have to just find the money to construct the road. I'm working towards, find the money to finish the design, at least even before TIA funds become available. So
Okay.
that's all I want to say.
Okay. I have one more question. Not for Dr. And that's for Mr. Trotter, if you don't mind, if he's still in the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Trotter, how you doing, sir?
I'm great, Commissioner Hassan. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Listen, I'm just asking, and I'm not suggesting this all, I'm just trying to, I got to ask on the table. And ask on the table is, the gentleman made mention, I think it's about, I don't know whether you call it 3 apartments, 3 units there, what have you, that he asked. I do already realize that you all have downsized your project substantially, but I just want to speak to the part about, he said, hey, we possibly can live with this if these 3 units or these 3 apartments, I don't know. Can you speak to that for me, please?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to. Actually, the first plan we presented to the planning department for review had 25 townhomes, and it had 6 units going up Alice Lane. What we learned in the review process with Dr. Malik's office and with Rob Sherman's office was that if we built townhomes further than 150 feet up Alice Lane, that we had to have a fire truck turnaround at the end of Alice Lane. That's not feasible on this plan because my client doesn't own enough land to build a fire truck turnaround. Therefore, we took out 3 of the units to reduce it down to 22, and so that we did not build more than 150 feet up Alice Lane off of Dennis Road. That's why those 3 units are where they are. We would love to build them further back away from Mr. Brown's house and build them further up Alice Lane if we could get relief on that fire truck turnaround. But I believe, and Dr. Malik can speak to this, if the units are more than 150 feet off of Dennis Road, then a fire truck turnaround is required, and that was just not feasible in this development. I was working with Mr. Brown and explained this to him. Like I said, we've reduced it from 25 to 22. We would love to push those last 3 units at the corner further north up Alice Lane, but it's not feasible with that fire truck turnaround that's required.
Thank you, sir. Well, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, with our planning and zoning department weighing in on the positive in our engineering department supporting, thinking that this is a feasible project, I'd like to make a substitute motion to approve.
You what, Mr. Commissioner Williams?
I second.
Okay, we got a second on it. Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir, I'm
We
here.
got a substitute motion to approve.
Okay, you ready to vote, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, substitute motion to approve item number 32. Mr. Clark,
No.
Mr. Franham,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
No, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Sias,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. That motion fails. It is 7 with Mr. Hassan, Ms. Scott, and Mr. Dennis Williams voting yes.
All
The
right, we got a
original,
motion.
okay,
Yes, ma'am, sorry, go ahead.
the original motion for item number 32 is to deny Commissioner Franum and Commissioner Clark. Ready to vote, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Hassan and Ms. Scott voting no.
All right. Where we going, Ms. Bonner?
That takes us to item number 33.
All righty.
Item 33 is a request for concurrence with the Planning Commission to deny petition requesting a change of zoning from a Zone A agriculture to a Zone B2 general business affecting property known as 2657 Tobacco Road.
Mr. Size.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Unfortunately, this is another one of those circumstances where the infrastructure is not in place to support a business. There's no sewer. There may be some concerns with the water. And certainly the traffic piece has not been fixed there. So, and there's also been project where this has come up before, and there's been no solutions to the existing problem from the first time it came up. I move that we deny this request.
Second.
And
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, who was that? I'm sorry, it was muffled.
It was Mr. Hassan. Yeah, Mr. Size and then Mr. Hassan.
Okay, and that was to deny. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Are you ready to vote, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. The next item is item number 36. It's a motion to approve the appointment of Chris Rockwell to the EMS Chief, Augusta Fire Department, to the EMS Ambulance Quality of Service Subcommittee.
Commissioner Clark, you had an objection to it.
Let me,
Yeah.
Hang on a second, Mr. Hassan. I'm coming to you. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, I just wanted to inquire when and how we developed the EMS Ambulance Quality of Service Committee. How long has that been in existence?
Mr. Hassan, I come to you. Go ahead, Mr. Hassan. Commissioner Hassan,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
go ahead.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, so, yes, sir. That's the committee that you own, Commissioner Clark. You're a member of. That's the name of it.
That's the name of it?
That's the name of it. But for the
Wow.
record, what I want to, if any objection, I'd like to pull this from the agenda. There's several of my colleagues that's concerned about appointing anybody else to that. So I'd like to pull this from the committee without any objections, if you don't mind. Delete it from the.
Anybody?
Well, I appreciate you letting me know that I had a name.
Move to
All right.
delete. Move to delete.
All
So
right,
moved.
Okay,
All
with
right.
no objections? Okay,
no objections, Ms. Bonner.
okay.
37,
37 is to discuss a request from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office relative to the inmate commissary and telephone call profits be returned to the sheriff's office for jail maintenance and upkeep.
Mr. Hassan, I think you had some questions about it.
Yeah, but I think what we did initially, I want to probably weigh in, I would assume, but we turn this over to the administrator. If he actually let him look into this.
Okay, Mr. Administrator?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Commissioner?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we actually had a pretty lively meeting with the sheriff's office, and thank Sheriff Roundtree for putting that together. I think the request has a value of about $1 million in the general fund. And so there are some concerns that were expressed by finance that I also share. I would like to say that there are some maintenance needs that are at the sheriff's office. And I believe that, the same way that, we are fixing the roof over there and providing additional maintenance service, in being able to evaluate those needs, I think we can identify another funding source, but there is a concern about using this particular funding source, and I'll explain it very, very quickly. So I won't talk about the maintenance needs because I think we definitely need to provide any maintenance service that is needed at that facility. But this funding source in particular, in 2020, which was a pandemic year, had a value of about $830,000. The revenue sources for the law enforcement fund, which basically provides the funding over there, is about $62.6 million. That's paid almost exclusively through property and sales taxes. But we offset that cost with some of these minor revenues. In this instance, we'll just look at this one. That's $800,000. If we were to grant this request and give it from this funding source, you would basically either be removing $800,000 from their operations, and it would leave that fund in a deficit, or you would have to choose to take that $800,000 from some other source, and you would then be leaving another program at a deficit. And so with us just getting that information yesterday, what I would have preferred to do, because we haven't had a chance to do any type of evaluation or whatnot, like we did with their roof and other things. But if their estimates, let's just say they're correct at 1.1 million, of the projects we wouldn't be able to do, but maybe a fifth of those in this year. And so that value is around 380,000. And so we've identified where those funds could come from, and we could start on those projects in this year. But removing that $1 million in perpetuity creates a hole that I'm not sure how we feel.
Gotcha. Mr. Hassan, Commissioner Hassan.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Administrator, for that. So with that being said, I'm gonna make a motion, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and that is to deny the request to give the commissary funds to the sheriff's office, but at the same time allow the administrator to find ways to deal with the infrastructure needs that currently exist there. That's my motion.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Clark,
No.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Can we repeat that motion one more time, please?
the motion is to deny the request and to allow the administrator to address the needs through his plan of review.
Yes.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that a yes, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries with Mr.
Yeah.
Clark
Is
voting
it?
no. Yeah, no, sir.
Yes, ma'am. This internet is acting up.
Motion to give Dennis Williams better internet.
What's
Second.
wrong, man?
Hey,
Okay, our next
What-
item is item number 40. Those
Ms.
are
Bonner,
the
don't-
appointment. Go ahead.
Ms. Bonner,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bonner. Oh, wait,
Yes.
don't we need to do 38, I think?
Yes, sir, we do. That was taken,
Okay.
yeah. Commissioner Sias asked that be pulled from consent. You're right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you
Number
rolling,
30
you rolling, Mayor Pro Tem.
38 is to consider a request from probate judge regarding a new staff position in probate court.
Mr. Sires?
Yes, sir. I support this agenda item. I simply want to give the administrator opportunity to add the information he wanted to add in there. And once he tells us what that is, I will be happy to make the motion for approval with that information included.
You gave the salary and some other stuff, Mr. Administrator.
Yes, sir. The funding source we would pull from contingency. The total amount is $50,474, and it is for the position of judicial case manager. That includes the actual salary as well as $5,000 for the computer, as well as the benefits are all included in that amount.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, where you're headed?
I think, are we 40? Are we doing 40?
Yes,
40.
sir. That's going to be an open nomination process, sir.
Okay.
We have three.
Quick question before we jump into this, madam. Will this
Go
be
ahead.
to fill all three positions?
That's up to you. All three are expired terms.
But we only have one on the agenda.
Right.
Let me, can I explain that, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when the memorandum was sent to you all advising you of the three open seats, Commissioner Dennis Williams pretty much submitted a name as a nominee. You notice he said nominate and appoint. So if we open the seats, they're done through the nomination process. And for the sake of voting, we will number Mr. Weigel, number seat 1, Mr. Hall, seat 2, and Mr. Quincy Robinson, seat 3. The chairman would open nominations for Mr. Weigel. And once nominations are received and ask that they be closed, then we will vote on that seat. Then we would open seat number 2 for nominations. And then we would proceed to seat 3 under the same order.
Gotcha. So Ms. Bonner, so we accept, I guess, Mr. Woods from Commissioner Dennis Williams as a nomination?
Yes,
So
and we just need
okay.
to identify the seat. I guess Mr. Williams is asking Mr. Woods to be nominated to. Is it
Okay.
not? Okay, to replace Mr. Williams, are you prepared?
I would go one with the first one on the list because they all need replacing. So it makes no difference who we replace. So
Okay.
I would go with seat 8.
Okay,
Well, may I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Commissioner Size.
Mr. Quincy Robinson, I would suggest we would do that particular seat in this setting because as you know, Mr. Robinson is deceased.
Right. Well, I had somebody that I wanted to do for his seat. Mr.
It doesn't
Robinson
matter.
lives in my district. It doesn't matter. You got 3 seats open.
But I'm
So let's
saying
just nominate and go.
nobody sent any name forward other than this. Then the rest of us will be blind on those. That's my concern.
It doesn't.
well,
Who
nominations
would,
can't come from
Ms.
the floor.
Bonner? Ms.
Yes, sir.
Bonner,
Yes,
who
sir.
was the first one that is coming off? Who's the first one that's coming off?
Well, Mr. Weigel's term expired on 5/31/12. Mr. Hall's
Okay.
term expired in 09. And Mr. Robinson, of course, due to his death, his term expired in 12.
Okay, so Ms. Bonner, like you said, let's do Quincy Robinson. So we're nominating Mr. Woods for Mr. Robinson's seat. Is that good?
I'm fine with it.
You fine with that?
Okay, so we're opening
Okay.
seat number 3. Okay, the nomination, Mr. Chairman.
Nomination closed.
Nominations, okay, closed with Mr. Woods replacing Mr. Robinson.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
You want
Yeah.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Woods would replace Mr. Robinson.
Let's open up the next seat, Ms. Bonner.
So
Would
we
that be
just
Mr.
gonna pick these
Weigel?
names out there, huh?
We need,
Hang on a second. Oh, we got somebody else seat that went out in 2009, and I would like to nominate Steve Morrison for that seat.
Is that Mr. Weigel, number 1, Steve Morris?
Yes, ma'am.
You need to ask if there are any other nominations.
Any other nominations for that one?
Nomination closed.
Okay, let's see, Robinson. Okay, Mr. Weigel. Mr. Morris is being nominated for that. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh,
That motion carries 8-2 with Mr. Sias and Mr. Dennis Williams voting no.
Gotcha. Do we want to do the third one, or we want to?
Yes.
What?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd
Go
like to
ahead.
I'd like to nominate Sarah Scott for that last position.
All right. Any other nominations? Any other
Nomination-
nominations for that seat?
Nomination closed.
Close the nomination.
Okay. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Sias voting no.
Okay.
And Mr. Garrett, can we get Ms. Sarah Scott to provide us a TBQ, please?
She has one on file.
She does. Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And Mr. Morris has one on file.
Yes, ma'am.
That's Mr. Yes, sir. Okay, we're done with that. That takes.
Not yet.
Oh, no, we go to the last item. That's where I'm headed.
Yeah, hang on a second. Miss- Hang on a second.
Okay.
Commissioner Sires, your question?
Yes, sir. I have nothing against any of the nominees that were nominated and approved, not one thing. What I have is an issue with the process. We've kind of threw the process out the door. And we're just sitting here in the middle of a meeting, bringing up names that nobody has any reference or had anything, that opportunity to ask a question about them. That's the problem I had with that. This other gentleman was already on the agenda, and we know who it was, and we had opportunity to ask questions. But that's my problem with this process. Going back to what the commissioner from the 9th said earlier, we should have a process that we use. And normally you want to know who these folks are before you vote on them. You don't have to investigate them, but you at least know who these consensus appointments, these recommended names are. That was my issue with that. Thank you.
I agree. Who else had something to say? Anybody? All right, 41, Ms. Bonner.
That's a report from the administrator regarding guidelines for special events.
Mr. Administrator.
Yes, can we have Director McDowell brought into the meeting? And while we bring him in,
sir.
Just an update. I mean, I think we forwarded through the appropriate committee what the guidelines are. And I believe that the partnership between, just about every entity that does outdoor events, our parks and recreation leaders, as well as representatives from the mayor's office and others, we have a safe plan to reopen and begin providing access to outdoor events on city-sponsored property. And thank you, Commissioner Franton, for kind of leading the way and helping us put these things in place. What I would also say is that the governor just released some guidelines that really hinder all restrictions to a certain extent. And so while those are temporary, I would defer to legal on comparing our recommendations to that of the governor's restrictions. But I do believe that though that information distributed covers all of the activities. Mr. McDowell, although I sent it to you in writing, he can give you a summary if you need it. But I would entertain any questions, concerns, or thoughts that the commission might have.
Anyone? Mr. Franton.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have a question for the administrator. Based on the governor's orders, is every restaurant now or bar allowed to be 100% capacity?
You know, let me just do a
And
quick.
I'm gonna tell you how I saw a local establishment put out a video yesterday that basically said everything's 100% open, and I didn't know that was the case, and just was wondering.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that the interpretation is that everything is 100% open. The interesting thing that I read, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but the interesting things that I read in his order or the interpretation that we received is that it restricts your ability to enforce. So while they may not be open, if you don't have the ability to enforce, it kind of renders you powerless. I'm looking for here we go. I'll just give you a couple of highlights just from his order. So it eliminates the ability of law enforcement to close an organization for failure to comply with the executive order provisions. That's a challenge in itself. Of course, it became effective on April 8. It eliminates the ban on gatherings of any size. It eliminates shelter in place requirements. It removed the critical infrastructure distinction and collapses all suggested measures into one main list with a small number of additional industry-specific requirements. Of course, it did still require folks to wear masks and things of that nature. But the way I interpret it, again, as a non-lawyer, it really restricted our ability to enforce folks who do not comply, or organizations that do not comply. And so one thing that I'm not sure we've had enough time to do is actually break down what the definitions of, let's say, an organization would be, and things of that nature. But the summary that I provided was to give high level guidance, and I'm sure our legal team will, give more definitive insights once they've had a chance to review.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think my concern is that I saw establishment this weekend that probably had 500 to 700 people in it, not one mask, having a good time, and yet as a government, we're saying that we can't have a Parks and Rec event, but we're letting the private side. I mean, just let's just be across the board fair based on whatever we can do. Is my thing how we're going to move forward. So thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And I will, just to give you some clarity, I think our recommendations are after the governor's orders expire, because I don't think we can, at this point, if it eliminates bans of any size, the way I would interpret that is that we cannot ban events of any size. So, but again, I'm not a lawyer, so I want to make sure I make that clear for the record. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Anyone else? Do we just need to take this as information or what?
Sir, without objection would be nice.
Okay, without objection. Okay.
Okay.
Where are we going, Ms. Bunn? Addendum?
Yes, sir. The addendum, item number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 1 is a motion to discuss renewing the exemption of the county vehicle assigned to the mayor from the decal requirement under OCGA section 368020. Mr. Administrator or Ms. Dowse, I don't know who you have.
Yeah, if Ms. Dowse could be let in, she'd be able to answer any questions. I would just say, as being new to Augusta, we've just been looking at all of the requirements of the office to make sure we're in compliance with all state, federal, state, and local laws. And so this is one that is a requirement that was not addressed through the office last year. And so it's a simple requirement that a hearing be held. It's a fairly new law. And the mayor definitely wants to be in compliance as well. And so we wanted to just bring it forward to have the required public hearing. And so that is what the request would be today. If there's any clarity needed, I would defer to both Director Dowse as well as Attorney Brown.
Okay, let me ask a question first. I mean, we just need a hearing. Do we want to go ahead and do the hearing, or do we want to hear from Ms. Dowse and Attorney Brown? Anyone? Go ahead, Attorney Brown.
I believe, Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, I believe that the needed action at this point, if it is the will of the body, would be to to make a motion to have a public hearing in consideration of renewing the exemptions of the mayor's vehicle from the decal ordinance.
Yes, sir. Ms. Dowse, anything to add to that?
No, sir.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Make that motion. Do you have
I'll
a date on
second.
that though? Do you need a date associated with that? Do you want to, when you want to do the public hearing? Ms.
We're
Dowse?
targeting May 27th, which is the same day of the commission meeting. That would be consistent with the time frame in which we did this last, which means the public hearing will be held earlier and then the commission meeting will follow.
Okay. So you said do the public hearing on May 27th?
Yes, sir.
Is
That's
that
the
April
target
27th
date.
or May 27th?
That's May 27th.
May 27th, okay.
May?
I think it's April, isn't it?
All right.
April.
Oh, my apologies. May 25th.
There's.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
I'm not sure there's a need to wait another month it will be usually a half-hour meeting, a half hour before the commission meeting. It could be any date that the commission wants to go ahead and move forth with this.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
When is the next commission meeting scheduled?
May 4th.
May 4th?
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to make a motion for the public hearing about the decal on the mayor for May the 4th.
Second.
Okay, before we go, Ms. Dawes, you had your finger up?
No, I was looking at my calendar, wanted to ensure that we had enough time to run it in the Chronicle. So
Oh,
it seems
okay.
that we would if we do it on May 4th.
Okay, Ms. Bonner, we've got a motion in a second.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Frenham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
And that motion carries unanimously.
Yes, ma'am. Where we going?
To adjournment, sir.
Oh,
I thought I thought we had two more.
Yeah.
Where are they?
The addendum.
Addendum.
You did the addendum.
Yeah.
And the other one was for information. It was just supporting documentation behind
Okay.
item number 39.
Okay, so we're good?
Yes,
Motion
sir.
to adjourn.
All right, well, bye.
How soon can you get that motion?
Bye.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Happy trails. Enjoy
Happy
your
trails,
Just-
Attorney Brown. We did something wrong, but we'll correct it next meeting.
That's right.
Bye.